Hello, welcome to this edition of Inside the News. I am Babajide Akinyele. In today's edition, we would like to examine the current rise of cyber attacks in the 21st century and how nations are positioning for this new form of modern warfare. Now, what are the prospects, challenges, and the security measures to be taken to address this modern challenge? These and more we will analyze in this edition of Inside the News. Do stay with us. Cyber warfare refers to politically motivated hacking to conduct sabotage and espionage. Now, the United States government security expert Richard A. Clarke, in his book Cyber, defines cyber warfare as actions by a nation state to penetrate another nation's computers or networks for the purposes of causing damage or disruption. The economist describes cyberspace as the fifth domain of warfare, and William J. Lynn, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense, states that as a doctrinal matter, the Pentagon has formally recognized cyberspace as a new domain in warfare, which has become just as critical to military operations as land, sea, air, and space warfare. Let's see these reports.
Cyber is critical interest to all of us, and much of our nation's equities are dependent on securing cyberspace. Over the last decade, the internet has morphed from a medium carrying communications about things of value to a place where we store our nation's wealth and treasure. Consider the bounty of both personal and national treasure that resides on the internet. Information, money, medical records, personal email, critical infrastructure, and most important, national security. It is not a hyperbole to say that we have as much at risk or more than any other nation. Going to the heart of the matter, consider these facts about the networked world we live in. Around 247 billion emails are sent per day in 2010. About 200 billion of those were spam. I think I got all those. I have 4 daughters. They send me most of that. 90 trillion email messages sent in 2009. Wireless internet users are growing exponentially. Currently, 307 million accounts worldwide, projected to go to 1.4 billion by 2014. There are approximately 250,000 probes into Defense Department networks every hour. That is the unseen backdrop for this medium, the internet, that has become a way of life for all of us. The internet is a network of networks that connects millions of computers that our nation's businesses, government, and military relies on. It is fragile. Yeah, think of the opportunities. Look at where this will go. And I know Anya was saying that she teaches at Stanford, and you look at the technical capabilities that really originated here, Silicon Valley, right? So it's all your fault. And the good news is now we can solve the problem. Because I do think this is a tremendous opportunity. Think of where we'll be in 5 or 10 years, what you can do with some of these devices. The iPads, for example, and devices of that size, in 5 years we're going to be looking at human genome, solving cancer. This is great for our country, for our future, for all the right reasons. This is a tremendous opportunity. And I am a huge advocate for technology and where it's going. But there are some issues, and those issues are the vulnerabilities. And so therein is the problem. When we initially started these out, when ARPANET started, right, nobody thought about the vulnerabilities. They thought, wouldn't it be great if we could communicate with packets and we can digitize, we can get all this going? Look at the great opportunities. But the vulnerabilities are huge. And you see that all the time. You see the hackings that have gone into a number of companies over the last year and a half. In fact, it's interesting. It wasn't as big a deal until the New York Times got hacked a few weeks ago, and now all of a sudden, okay, so they say, okay, this is real. When others get hacked, it's a problem. When we get hacked, it's real. Look at it, RSA, Google, right? All the high-tech companies, Lockheed, you just name them, put them out there. Just about every company we know has been hacked for intellectual property and for other things. But the problem doesn't stop there. What concerns me is not the fact that these systems are being hacked. The issues are going from stealing intellectual property, a huge economic drain on our country, to the great potential for disruption and destruction. And you only have to look out over the last several years. Look at what's happened in the near abroad from Russia with Estonia, 2007, the Tallinn Monument, and then the huge distributed denial of service attack on Estonia. I've met with President Ilz and some of his folks. It was devastating to them because they are truly an internet country. They had to disconnect from international internet. There's a huge set of impacts on them across the board. They vote on the network, e-voting. They're doing it all. Big problem.
When you consider the fact that we're more vulnerable to these kind of attacks than almost any other society on Earth, it raises the question, do you want to start down that road? The book reports that there was one case of a presidentially authorized cyber attack. It happened during the height of the war in Iraq in about 2006, when we got into a computer system that was being run by Al-Qaeda in Iraq. It was probably a fairly simple computer system, and we messed around enough to force Al-Qaeda to deliver a bunch of their own people to a place where it turned out we had a greeting party waiting for them. But that's a fairly minor case. But Congress enacted a bill the week of the first TARP bailout in September, so it did not get much publicity, in which they allocated $16 billion to go look at both cyber defenses and cyber attacks over 5 years. And it's going to be very interesting to see how President Obama takes that issue.
Historically, some of the worst cyber attacks that drained millions of dollars in recent history include Morris, named after Robert Tappan Morris, who created the virus in 1988. It was one of the first viruses reported in the world. Actually, it was coded to find the size of the internet. Morris, presently the professor of Cornell University, was fined for his adventurous creation. Melissa also came on board, and it was created and named after a bar dancer by David L. Smith and was reported in 1999. The virus was attached along with emails which had a message: "Here is that document you asked for. Don't show it to anybody else." As soon as it got activated, it sends the same to the top 50 people in the contacts list. It also causes a heavy damage in the industry, and it leads to the shutting down of email gateways of companies like Intel Core, Alcatel-Lucent, Microsoft, to mention just a few. Love Letter was the virus that broke the heart of people and robbed them of millions. It was an email with the subject "I love you," which had an attachment, "Love Letter for you." The users didn't know that it was a Visual Basic script because the extension was always hidden. The virus copied itself to all the addresses in the Windows address book with the user's sender address. It also brought malicious changes to the user's system. Now, the most expensive love letter in the world cost a damage of about $10 billion. The class virus was also capable of self-replication and spoofing like the other worms. In addition to that, it disabled the antivirus software and made the system vulnerable to other malicious attacks. The other advantage of the worm was that it could act as a normal virus, worm, or a Trojan, depending on its versions. But just because it existed in the past doesn't mean it's not coming back. Hackers are now working on this little menace to make it more malicious. The code Red Worm, released on the 13th of July 2001, attacked Microsoft web servers. The worm sneaked through the server through a patch in the indexing software with IIS. It used the buffer overflow technique. A long stream of repeated characters, N, was used to overflow a buffer. A fix was found in a month's time, which limited the damage to $2.5 billion. A similar worm was released 2 weeks after Code Red, and they named it Code Red 2. NIMDA, the worm, also a file infector, spread throughout the world in 22 minutes. The reason why NIMDA was more effective than others was because it used different methods for propagation. It not only used emails but also open network shares and backdoor left by other viruses. NIMDA, which is spelled backwards, is admin. The damage caused by NIMDA is about $635 million. Then came the SQL Slammer, which actually exploits the vulnerability in the Microsoft SQL servers and uses the buffer overflow bug to slow down the servers. The worst part of it is that it causes DOS attacks, which is denial of service, and also slows down the entire internet. Up to date, around 200,000 systems have been affected by this worm. MS Blaster came to existence in August 2003 and it began to crack the Windows operating systems. Also, it targeted the Windows Update.com site with DOS attacks which resulted in multiple restarts in machines running Windows NT and Windows 2003. Now, companies and organizations like the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, BMW AG, Philadelphia City Hall, and thousands of home and corporate users were blasted by the blaster. MyDoom, another major cyber challenge, attacks systems with Microsoft Windows. The fastest spreading email worm ever appears with a text message, Andy, I'm just doing my job, nothing personal, sorry. There are two versions of MyDoom worms, MyDoom A and MyDoom B. Both the versions attack through the back door. Additional feature of MyDoom B is to block Microsoft websites and to block HTTP access to other antivirus websites. Now, this makes an extremely dangerous worm. Then we have Wheaty. The Wheaty worm was released in March 2004. Now, the Wheaty attacks firewall and other security products of Internet Security Systems, ISS, now IBM Internet Security System. It got the name Wheaty because of the message, insert Wheaty message here, which was attached with the worm. The cute little Wheaty worm infected 12,000 computers in 30 minutes and generated 90 gigabytes per second of UDP traffic.
The problems that we face are huge. They're huge, and they're not going to go away. We have to solve them. And we have to put in the middle of this discussion a series of issues. First, civil liberties and privacy. This is my grandchildren talking to my wife. We don't want people interrupt her and listen to it. Those are private, personal communications. And we don't want a bad guy to get in, hack into one of my grandkids' computers and use that to attack Wall Street. But both of those are things that are happening today. And so we have the worst of all worlds. And I think the biggest problem we face is educating people about the problem and the solution. And the reason is people jump to the wrong conclusion right off the bat and said, don't do this or don't do that. And in Washington, my concern is by people jumping to a conclusion before they fully understand the problem, we freeze the bureaucracy and we end up with no solution. And that doesn't do our country good.
We should be concerned, we're going to be attacked, we should do something. But government doesn't really know exactly how to handle it because there's so many ifs, ands, and buts involved that the whole thing is looking to be just too much for anyone to handle. When Congress started going over it and they proposed CISPA earlier this year, it would have been great for cybersecurity prevention. It would have been great to prevent attacks from foreign nations. However, it also would have been terrible for anyone who actually valued their privacy. And the fact that it created such a major backlash, on the internet and even across the world, people were going, American, can you really do this? This is not a good idea. It ended up passing, but the Senate and the House, they couldn't agree on any sort of cybersecurity to do. The White House has said we have an executive order. We're going to put it out there when it's time. And now we have Panetta. He graduated. It went from a pre-cyber Pearl Harbor to a pre-cyber 9/11. So we've elevated the level of catastrophe that was imminent at this point. So no, at this point it is imminent, and the reason is because we're already doing it. We've been engaged in a cyber war, and it's incredibly obvious. But it's such I don't even want to call it a shadow war because everyone knows we're doing it. There's been Stuxnet, there's been Flame, there's been computer experts from all over the world saying, hey, it looks like America did this and they sent it to Iran and they tried to screw up everything there. It looks like they did it with Israel. It looks like they'll do it again. It looks like they are doing it again. It's been happening over and over and over again. And everyone's aware of it, it seems, except the White House. In fact, when it came out in the New York Times that Obama had said, let's keep this, it's called the Olympic Games program. It started under President Bush. And just wage a cyber war in Iran. And Obama said, yeah, let's keep doing that. And when the Times went ahead and posted about it, Congress kind of flipped out and said, hey, we can't be leaking out this kind of information. You know, people are gonna know, wait, America's already attacking. You know, it's gonna come back and haunt us, and there's gonna be copycat attacks. But like, yeah, obviously, like, how many years can we keep just trying to attack the infrastructure of other countries for our own benefit before they turn it around and do it to us? So it's great that Panetta is actually saying, hey, it's time, because at this point it seems like it would just be right around the corner that we're going to be hit, and at that point probably Obama will slide out that cybersecurity legislation, the executive order that's been rumored, and when that happens, we'll just have to accept it because it's an executive order and there's really not that much we can do. And of course, by that point, it'll probably be already way more advanced and scary and terrifying, and then we're just going to lose all of our computer rights.
As we were being hired to respond to computer intrusions, we ran into APT1 again and again and again. So we started observing and orienting the APT1 just because of the volume of the attacks they were doing.
And how did you narrow them down then to a specific neighborhood just outside of downtown Shanghai?
After responding to APT1 for years at over 100 different organizations, you start to pick up patterns, such as over 98% of the time when they were committing a computer intrusion, they're using the mainland Chinese character set. Over 98% of the time when they were doing their intrusions into US companies, they were also using IP addresses from Shanghai. So I called 98% not an anomaly. At the same time, we're always doing open source researching, and what we had learned is there's a unit 61398, that's chartered with hiring people that can speak English and be able to exploit networks and know computer security. And we thought that was an interesting combination. And that unit just so happens to be located in the same region of Shanghai where we're tracking over 90% of the connections coming from.
In 2009, President Barack Obama declared America's digital infrastructure to be a strategic national asset. And in May 2010, the Pentagon set up its new U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Cybercom, to defend American military networks and attack other countries' systems. The EU has set up ENISA, European Network and Information Security Agency, and there are now further plans to significantly expand ENISA's capabilities. The United Kingdom has also set up a cybersecurity and operations center based in Government Communication Headquarters, GCHQ, the British equivalent of the NSA. In the US, Cyber Command is only set up to protect the military, whereas the government and corporate infrastructures are primarily the responsibility, respectively, of the Department of Homeland Security and private companies. In February 2010, top American lawmakers warned that the threat of a crippling attack on telecommunications and computer networks was sharply on the rise. According to the Lipman report, numerous key sectors of the U.S. economy, along with that of other nations, are currently at risk, including cyber threats to public and private facilities, banking and finance, transportation, manufacturing, medical, education, and government, all of which are now dependent on computers for daily operations. The Economist writes that China has plans of winning the information war by the mid-21st century. They note that other countries are likewise organizing for cyber war. Among them are Russia, Israel, and North Korea. Iran boasts of having the world's second largest cyber army.
Experts say Stuxnet is an exceptionally sophisticated computer worm that attacks the software used to control automated systems. It's now been found in thousands of computers in Asia, Europe, and the US, but 60% of the infected computers are in Iran. Stuxnet's first target may have been Iran's nuclear facilities.
It's one of the most sophisticated threats we've seen, and certainly one of the most worrying, considering it actually wants to change how machinery in the real world works.
Stuxnet is designed to weave its way into automated systems that control anything from an oil refinery to a water treatment facility. Once inside a computer, it secretly steals information and rewrites computer codes. Security experts say this malware or malicious software is no simple virus dreamed up by a hacker, but one that took 5 to 10 experts a minimum of 6 months to create.
There are not too many people who could pull this off. Certainly a government agency would be one of the suspects.
Experts believe Stuxnet was originally contained in a memory stick. It first struck in June 2009, but wasn't detected until a year later. Iran's state-run news agency says the cyber attack has had no impact on its nuclear facilities, but admits some of its employees' software has been affected.
I mean, it's interesting to see that the Iranian government itself has come out and acknowledged that it has been struck.
Trita Parsi believes it's a new dimension in sabotage and warfare. How would you characterize Iran's response?
Well, on the one hand, the Iranians may want to portray that they've not really been hit hard by this in order to, part of their bluster, saying that they're doing really well. On the other hand, they want to convey to their own population that the United States does not have positive intentions towards the Iranians.
Computer security experts are now trying to decode the insidious threat, but its creators hid their tracks so well, experts say we will likely never know who created it.
Potential targets in internet sabotage include all aspects of the internet, from the backbones of the web to the internet service providers and the varying types of data communication, mediums and network equipment. This would include web servers, enterprise information systems, client server systems, communication links, network equipment, and the desktops and laptops in businesses and homes. Electrical grids and telecommunication systems are also deemed vulnerable.